Please read the questions carefully. Okay, are we all done? What are the 4 types of policy according to Loewy's classification? Distributive, redistributive, regulatory, and constituent. Is policy studies a predominantly quantitative science or a subjective social science? If rational decisions are solution focused, blank decisions tend to be process focused. Incremental. Politics as usual, micro policy and sectoral policy are synonyms for low politics policy. The main source of data in policy analysis are blank and people. Sorry? Documents. Documents is more accurate, not really literature. We don't really look at literature as a source of data. The types of policy contexts according to Leister are situational, blank, cultural, and exogenous. Structural, the unchanging elements of a administration or polity. Structural is, according to the framework, it's structural, but it refers also to the political base, the administrative base, the economic base. Identify the 3 disciplines of those listed which are least influential in the field of health policy studies. Astronomy, chemistry, and mathematics. Name one of the 2 authors of the policy triangle framework of content, context, actors, and process. Walt and Gilson. Okay, so should we go back a little bit, spend maybe about 20 minutes on the concepts, and then we can revisit some of your research questions from yesterday's exercise and see maybe how those could be a bit more developed. So this is basically some broad concepts from the field of policy analysis. So I think this is quite central and quite important, that we are not really concerned with facts, but we are concerned with concepts and their application. So these concepts become quite crucial. They can help us to explain situations, understand situations better. So we'll run through the concepts, and then when we come to the problems that you discussed yesterday and how you framed your questions and what are the kind of theoretical inferences that you can draw from that. The theory is important because it helps you to understand a situation, explain a situation, and then that helps you to deal with it. So this is where the first that question came from. It's a field which is influenced by all these different fields, and chemistry and astronomy and astrology are not part of that. Also mathematics, also this point that it's not really a quantitative science, it's more of a subjective science, so maths doesn't play a big role. Okay, so this is a central concept. We already discussed high politics and low politics, and we discussed how health is low politics, often low politics in India, it's often high politics in other countries. And then we discussed how in the US it's actually the spending on health that has become a high politics issue. So these are the kind of arenas at which low politics issues play out within ministries, within departments, within institutions. That's where all the politics is happening. It's not that the politics is not happening. So what this tells us is that frequently when people say politics, they're referring to high level politics. What we are saying is, this is a useful concept which draws attention to the importance of micro politics. So it allows you also to look at institutions, at sectors, at ministries as arenas of political activity, and that they are all politically charged. But that's why this is a foundational concept. The concept of, say, punctuated equilibrium, which we discussed in agenda setting, issues switch from high politics to low politics, and it's a dynamic movement that happens. It's not that one particular issue is fixed as a low politics issue. It can, as a result of a situational context, as a result of a particular event, it can suddenly become a high politics issue. And similarly, high politics issues can also become low politics issues, and that's a constant. So this being the foundational concept, it's just a concept we need to wrap our head around. Then it gives us an opportunity to enter into all those kinds of more explanatory theories, such as theories of agenda setting, which suggest that agenda setting is basically an interplay between high politics and low politics. Swachh Bharat is a high politics issue because it occupies headlines, it occupies the attention of these actors, and then it has significance at this level, these levels. But what is maybe interesting to note is that it doesn't have the same type of significance it has as high politics. It has a different type of significance. So suppose you introduce a big new scheme like Swachh Bharat, right? So the perception is that everybody needs to take certain actions in order to perpetuate that goal of cleanliness, right? Now, how does that actually play out at these levels? It plays out in a different way, because it comes associated with some financial package, it comes associated with a scheme, it impacts on existing schemes, it creates a sort of a micro-politics within the institutional environment. So within the health system, it creates a whole set of dynamics. So you may find many program managers or many officials are not very happy with this new program because it's occupying a lot of space, or it's distorting the existing agendas, or some of them may be happy with it because it is bringing some new financial inflow, all of that. All those dynamics are low politics dynamics. So just again to specify that none of these are hard and fast classifications. They are basically, and they are actually, why we put them up as binaries like this, high politics and low politics, is that it just helps us to clarify the concept. But in reality, most things are somewhere in between. That's always the issue with binaries. Yeah. So when we are going to talk about rational and incremental also, it's just a conceptual distinction of how people may look at a particular policy, how it may be interpreted, how decisions may be taken. But in reality, there's always something in between. These are spectrums. They're not hard and fast classifications. अखबारों में जो आता है, पार्लियामेंट में डिस्कस होता है, न्यूज़ चैनल्स में जो डिस्कस होता है, these are all high politics issues. Yeah. But it doesn't mean the lay person is not concerned with low politics. The lay person is extremely concerned with low politics. Because low politics is actually the realm where the state interfaces with the people, or where other institutions interface with people. They go to a hospital, they don't get the care they want, they don't get the attention they want, they are made to wait for long hours, hospitals are only open at times which is their working hours. These are all things that they face, and these are all as a result of these low politics dynamics. Okay, this one also, I think it's pretty central. Are ideas more important or are interests more important? Obviously they're both important, but sometimes we tend to overthink that ideas are important. Sometimes we think it's all about Swachh Bharat, or all about the messages that the government is giving, or all about science. And if we think like that, then we will stumble, because at the heart of many of these ideas are a particular set of interests. Yeah. So we need to balance our understanding of the ideas and the interests. And on the other hand, if you think it's only about the interests, if you think, oh, this is all self-motivated, it's all cynical, it's all, then also we are missing part of the picture, because ideas are also important. The interests are guided by the ideas as much as the ideas are guided by the interests. And it's a complex interplay. Some ideas are good, some ideas are bad, all of that judgment is not something that we are getting into. But there are ideas out there. There's a very nice quotation. It's by Max Weber, who is a sociologist from the 19th century, I think. He came up with this whole theory of legal rational authority, and the kind of authority, the power that is conferred on the institutions of the state in a society. So he says that, he makes a metaphor of a train. The tracks are set by ideas. So the direction you go in is based on ideas, but the impetus for the train to go forward, for humanity to move forward, is on interests. Anyway, that's one way of thinking about it. But what we realize is that there is a complicated way and a complex way in which ideas and interests interact with each other. And this is not just in policy making. I'm not talking about the high level stuff only, at every level. Even when you have somebody is providing services, they are interacting with the user, with the patient, a doctor is interacting, a nurse is interacting. They are influenced by a set of ideas and norms. And actually professions are very highly influenced by ideas and norms. Because the whole idea of a profession is that you behave in a particular way, you structure your interactions in a particular way. And those ideas are crucial. And in fact, the whole idea of being a health professional in some ways is to say that I will put my interests aside and I will focus on the ideas. Yeah, it doesn't actually play out like that, and that's something that people are realizing, that the professions are not only guided by their professionalism, they are also guided by all other human factors. There is a code of behavior, absolutely, and that actually is potentially more important than the skills. If a compounder works with a doctor for 5 years, he'll pick up all the skills, but he's not a professional. And I'm not giving a value judgment here. It's not about the value judgment. It's about being part of a setup. It's being part of a way of working, a way of thinking, and that is these codes of behavior and conduct. And those codes of behavior and conduct are set up by the people in the profession itself. And the society has given them a space to run their own business. The legal profession, the media, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, these are all examples. Law, any others? Press? Yeah, I already mentioned media. It's a different matter that they don't often follow those codes of conduct. But this is the distinguishing feature. And that is the idea of the profession is very dominant in health systems. So that's another idea that tends. But now we find that interests are also playing a very strong role. So there is rational solutions here is invoked in the particular context of when we think about science and the rationality of science, which is, there's a reasoned process for that, there's a scientific method, and there's provability and disprovability. All I'm saying is that constitutes a set of ideas. Yeah? The idea of science is also an idea. It doesn't exist independent of people. I mean, some people believe it does, that there is a universal scientific truth which is independent of people. But for the sake of understanding policy better, and because we are talking about a social science, let us assume that rationality of science has emerged as a result of a social process, and that is that people have developed these ideas. That's all it implies. It doesn't say that it's less important or more important. Actually, potentially it's more important because people have developed it. So that's the way in which rationality is being invoked here. Now just let me take you to the next slide, and in fact we could talk a bit more about rational choice, and this is a different way in which the word rationality has been invoked, although it's the same usage of the word rationality. This is used as a way of predicting behavior, and what rational choice theorists say is that people make choices based on optimization or maximization of their self-interest, and that is a form of rational behavior of those people, or people in policy environments, or people in social environments. It's not referring to the epistemological basis of science, which is also rationality. That's not the reference here. So it's a different form, it's a different type of reference, and I can easily see how it would get confusing. Okay, so maybe I need to explain it a bit more. So rational choice theory predicts behavior based on economic theories of maximization of self-interest. Okay, so if people behave purely on rationality, would they go to rural areas to practice? Let's think of this idea of rural practice. Yeah, and let's think of how these different theories can explain it. Let's say some people do go to rural areas. They stay there. Why do they do it? Can rational choice theory explain this? It's maximization of self-interest, and that emerges from a particular understanding of self-interest. If we delve deeper, then we can try and investigate what is the nature of self-interest, and is self-interest actually to be a socially realized being and all of that. But rational choice theories don't go that deep. They tend to stay at a more superficial level generally in terms of how we maximize our self-interest, which can be monetary, which can be political, which can be social of a particular kind. But they don't really go into that deep philosophy. So generally the theorization is more at that level. How can people maximize their ability to get the most and be most self-interested? Its rational choice theory is useful at predicting mass behavior and describing mass behavior, because a lot of people tend to behave based on maximization of self-interest. But there are always some people who don't. As it has been observed, rational choice theory is a useful tool because it predicts mass behavior well. But when we are talking about policy, usually there are sometimes, and especially when you're talking about key decisions, this is not so much about predicting mass behavior. That's more the realm of population studies because we are talking about large numbers of people. If we are talking about individually how policy decisions get made, then sometimes rational choice theory is useful. Definitely, it's definitely a useful thing. All I'm saying is not a complete theory. There are many aspects of human behavior which cannot be explained by theories of maximization of self-interest. Yeah. So doctors may also go to rural areas because they have belonging to a particular group or a network. Maybe that theory can explain it better. So if you belong to a local community, if you belong to a tribal community, or if women have very strong social networks which involve strong, it's been observed that women health providers often have stronger social networks which keep them in those areas. So network theory can explain that a bit better. They have affiliations they have with a larger group of people in their community. So that can be explained better by group and network theory. And discourse theory can also explain this issue. Although maybe this is not the best example for discourse theory, but what discourse theory will suggest is, again, it might bring you back to the idea of a professional and of a health worker. So if somebody is primarily driven by a set of ideas, which is that of being a profession and serving the public good, then that is also likely to be a factor for them to stay on and practice. And there are many such people. Yep. Or if they simply believe in a set of ideas, it is their ideology, it's their value system, that they want to work in a place where they maximize their ability to do good. And that's often based on an ideological foundation. So the way in which they understand issues is framed in the idea of the noble profession and being good and beneficence. But maybe that's not the best example. We can give other examples. But all we are doing here is we're finding a way to show that there are different types of influences on human behavior and different theories capture them in different ways. If you see problems as being framed in the context of lack of availability of institutions, and that you frame it that way because you come with a particular understanding of what the problems are. Yeah? And where does that understanding come from? Can you think about it? Can you think about how somebody else with a different background might have thought about this problem in a different way? Like when you talk to doctors about rural detention, most doctors, they all talk about the injustice meted out to doctors all the time. Yeah? And when you read it, there is an internal logic to that. There is nothing you can deny in all of that. It is unjust. But that is the frame of reasoning that they are operating in, and that is conditioned by their background, their interests, all of that. Yeah? And that frame of reasoning is different from, say, the planner's frame of reasoning and the economist's frame of reasoning or the program manager's frame of reasoning. And that is discourse theory. People have a different way of understanding reality and of understanding. And it is the problems in communicating across those different ways of understanding that creates policy gaps.